Ospreys are found on every continent except Antarctica, and they all migrate south for the winter and north for the summer. In Europe, they migrate down to Africa, some in Russia migrate to India, and here in New Hampshire, they head for the Amazon. These migrations are massive, 2,000 to 3,000 miles or more. Here's the standard path that ospreys from New England take down. These are the paths of 3 juveniles who summer in New Hampshire: Weber, Bergen, and Artu. Wildlife biologist Rob Biergaard says the evolutionary programming that osprey have developed seems to be pretty simple. It says, head south and stay over land wherever possible. These 3 were juveniles, and you can see that playing itself out when Bergen and Artu head out over the Atlantic off North Carolina. After a bit of open ocean, they start to feel uncomfortable and head for land. They get to the end of Florida, cross to Cuba, and start island hopping. Once they reach Hispaniola, they have to cross to South America, and this is what Biergaard says statistically is the most dangerous part of the trip, because they do it in hurricane season. But Weber, Bergen, and Artu made it through all right this year. Once they get to South America, they find a spot by a river, where they hang out and fish all winter. They have no chicks to raise, no mates to help feed. It's an Amazonian vacation. Ian McLeod of the Squam Lake Science Center says some of his birds have very small ranges down there, sometimes smaller than 10 miles across. They come back to these spots year after year. But there are plenty of ways that this migration can go wrong. If a bird is wired too strongly to fly south and not strongly enough to stick to the coast, they will often fly straight out into the Atlantic. Here's Chip. After a quick stopover in Narragansett Bay, he headed due south. It's not quite clear what happened, perhaps he got stuck in some weather, but Biergaard and McLeod are pretty sure that Chip landed on a boat that was headed for the English Channel. Out in water this deep, osprey can't fish because their prey need to be near the surface, so Chip was likely getting hungrier and hungrier as the ship headed east, and it looks like he struck out on his own at a few points and landed on different boats, but eventually his transponder signal went dead. It looks like he fell into the ocean, exhausted, after taking off and heading west in a last-ditch attempt to get back on course. But he almost made it to the Azores. With surprising frequency, though, according to Biergaard, birds that head out over the Atlantic survive the trip. Here's Belle, an adult who, for whatever reason, booked it out over the ocean this year. 56 hours later, she made landfall in Turks and Caicos and kept right on to Venezuela and, farther still, deep into Brazil. There, she seems to have settled, almost 3,500 miles from where she started. While somewhere between 60 and 75% of juveniles don't survive their first migration, once they figure out how it's done, survival rates are much better, with only about 10% of adults dying along the way. Biergaard and McLeod have observed that experienced birds seem to make better decisions. They take much more time to migrate, stopping frequently along the way to eat, and they make course corrections. Here's Donovan. On his way down this fall, he tried crossing from the Virgin Islands. It looks like strong winds or a storm started blowing him west, so he turned around, hung out and fattened up in Puerto Rico, St. Croix, and tried again, this time with great success. As GPS technology has gotten smaller and more lightweight over the past few years, researchers have been learning with astonishing detail about the behavior of birds like these. They now have transponders that talk to cell towers and can report in as frequently as once a minute. Biergaard says it's like watching just over the bird's shoulder. As they get even more compact, expect to see this kind of data for smaller and smaller birds.